Imagine a silent, invisible enemy striking fear in the hearts of millions. Can you guess what it could be? It's not a war or a natural disaster, but a tiny bacterium named Yersinia Pestis. This microscopic adversary, smaller than a grain of sand, instigated one of the most lethal pandemics, the Black Death. It's a bacterium that usually resides unnoticed in the gut of fleas. However, when it infiltrates a human host, its lethal nature is unveiled. In the 14th century, a bacterium named Yersinia Pestis embarked on a catastrophic journey from the Central Asian steppes. Transported by fleas infesting black rats, it traversed the Silk Road, nestled within merchant caravans. 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. Most of the occupants were dead, while those alive were gravely ill. Yersinia Pestis invaded the bustling European metropolises in October 1347. It aroused fear and confusion on arrival. The disease struck swiftly and mercilessly, and the medical knowledge of the era was powerless against it. People fell prey to the bacterium, their bodies branded by dark swollen lymph nodes, the bacterium's deadly signature. The anguish cries of the sick and dying reverberated through the streets, punctuated by the chilling toll of death bells. The reaction of the populace was a blend of terror and bewilderment. They couldn't comprehend the nature of this invisible enemy that was rapidly decimating their communities. They watched helplessly as their loved ones succumbed to the disease with horrifying speed, their bodies ravaged by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Amid the chaos, some sought solace in prayer, others turned to witchcraft, and many were consumed by despair. They grappled with the mystery of the disease, the reality of their vulnerability, and the seemingly incessant march of death. The bacterium that had silently infiltrated their lives was rewriting their future, their societies, and their very understanding of the world. The Black Death was more than just a pandemic, it was a historical turning point that shook the foundations of medieval Europe. It altered societal structures, challenged religious institutions, and forever changed the course of European history. The event left a permanent scar on the collective memory of humanity, a reminder of our vulnerability to nature's microscopic forces. This tiny bacterium was about to change the course of European history forever. An era of unimaginable suffering was about to unfold. As the plague spread like wildfire across Europe, no one was safe. The Black Death, the name given to this horrifying pandemic, was an indiscriminate destroyer that didn't discriminate between the aristocrats and the commoners. The elderly, the young, the wealthy, and the destitute all fell victim to this ferocious adversary. An illustration of this grim reality is the death of the daughter of King Edward III of England, who succumbed to the plague during the summer of 1348. However, in Europe, the wealthy swiftly adopted measures to fortify their households, while the less privileged bore a disproportionate burden of suffering. Remorseless, this killer was no ordinary disease but a deadly strain of the bacterium Yersinia Pestis. It was sweeping across continents at an unimaginable speed, leaving nothing but desolation in its wake. The plague was a grim reaper in its own right. The rapidity of its spread was unprecedented for the 14th century. It covered vast territories from the sunny coastlines of Italy to the frost-bitten landscapes of Norway in a matter of mere months. The bacterium hitched rides on fleas, known for their knack of clambering onto rats, which were prevalent across medieval Europe. These unassuming rodents served as the perfect vessels, inadvertently aiding in the rapid propagation of the plague. As these fleas bit the rats scurried about towns and cities. The plague began to permeate human settlements. But the Black Death wasn't content with just one mode of transmission. It also manifested in a form known as pneumonic plague. This airborne variant of the disease spread from person to person via tiny droplets suspended in the air. If an infected person were to cough, sneeze, or simply breathe near another, the plague could swiftly claim its next victim. The Black Death could lurk anywhere, on a rat's back, a flea's bite, or even on a neighbor's breath. The Black Death was terrifyingly efficient in its relentless mission to spread death. As the death statistics steadily soared, a cold shroud of fear and panic blanketed Europe. From the vibrant open-air markets of Florence to the serene hamlets of England, no place was safe from this ruthless invader. The very fragility of life was laid bare, and a dark shadow of uncertainty was cast over Europe as the grim reality of the pandemic's impact began to set in. As the death toll rose, Europe was plunged into a state of fear and panic. The Black Death was not just a health crisis, it was a harrowing chapter that reshaped the very fabric of European society. Surprisingly, if a mother survived the plague, her children tended to survive. If she died, they died with her. Over the next 5 years, the Black Death would kill more than 20 million people in Europe, almost 1/3 of the continent's population. With death lurking around every corner, society as people knew it began to crumble. The onset of the Black Death introduced an invisible assailant, known scientifically as Yersinia Pestis, a bacterium responsible for the pneumonic plague. This unseen enemy didn't discriminate, targeting every individual, no matter their age, status, or occupation. This led to an unprecedented social collapse in Europe. As the plague progressed, social order, which was the backbone of communities, started to disintegrate. Rising fear began to supersede societal norms and moral obligations. Every day, people were reminded of the fragility of life, and the primal survival instinct began to outshine communal and familial ties. In the face of such adversity, individuals who were infected were often deserted, left alone to face their impending doom. Neighbors became enemies, friendships were severed, and in extreme cases, families were torn apart. Amid this chaos, people started hunting for answers, and their search led them towards superstition. The plague, brutal and random, was perceived as a divine retribution, resulting in a spike in religious extremism. The terror-stricken population started searching for scapegoats to lay the blame on for their tragedies, leading to the persecution of the marginalized, the outsiders, and the misunderstood. The Jewish communities of Europe in particular were made the chief culprits. Accused of tainting the water supply to instigate the pandemic, they were subjected to violent massacre. This dark period in European history was driven by ignorance and fear. Not only did the plague wipe out a significant portion of the population, but it also corroded the very essence of society, planting seeds of suspicion and animosity that would endure for generations to come. This catastrophe tested human endurance like never before. But just as society fell apart, the economic system began to wobble as well. As society collapsed, so too did the economy. The Black Death, thus, left a profound impact on both the societal and economic fabric of Europe. The Black Death indeed brought Europe to its knees. The pandemic's high mortality rates led to a dramatic decline in population, triggering labor shortages, economic disarray, and profound changes in societal structures. The plague didn't just take lives, it upended the economy of an entire continent. Envision 14th century Europe. It was a society shaped by manual labor, largely agriculture under the feudal system. Suddenly the Black Death struck, decimating around 60% of the populace. This massive loss created a tremendous void in the workforce, which destabilized the foundation of medieval European society. Immediately, labor values surged. There were fewer workers to maintain the fields, collect the harvests, and care for livestock. The remaining laborers found themselves empowered. They could negotiate improved wages, superior working conditions, and increased rights. This shift in power dynamics between the lords and serfs struck a massive blow to the feudal system, which until then, banked on the abundance of labor to uphold the status quo. The agriculture sector was not the only one that suffered. The pandemic also severely impacted trade. As people became sick or succumbed to the disease, the production of goods plummeted. This scarcity triggered inflation, causing the cost of goods to escalate. Trade routes were interrupted, causing commerce across Europe to grind to a halt. In this disruption, however, economic transformation began to sprout. The enhanced bargaining power of the workers and the decrease in goods availability stimulated innovation. New farming techniques were invented, and a transformation towards a more diversified economy was initiated. The feudal system, which had been the ruling system in Europe for ages, gradually gave way to a more contemporary, market-oriented economy. But such significant changes were not without their drawbacks. The shift was a difficult one, brimming with social unrest, rebellion, and conflict. The framework that had once offered stability, although flawed, was shattered. A new structure needed to be erected from the ruins. The Black Death was not just a health crisis, it was an economic catastrophe. But just like any catastrophe, it necessitated a reassessment, a reevaluation, a revolution. It was a grim chapter in history that transformed not only Europe but also the entire global economic landscape. In the wake of the Black Death, Europe was a significantly altered landscape. The contagious disease, stemming from the bacterium Yersinia Pestis, had scathed the continent. What followed wasn't exclusively a scene of doom, but also a time of enduring change in myriad aspects of existence. The significant loss of life led to a shift in artistic themes, focusing on mortality and life's transience. This era gave birth to danse macabre, an artistic genre portraying death's universality impacting all social levels. Art and culture were not the only aspects to transform, the economy of Europe was modified as well. The population reduction led to a scarcity of labor, igniting the rise of the middle class. Surviving workers with lesser competition for work found themselves in a position to negotiate for better pay. This repositioning of economic clout from the upper class to the ordinary people was a key milestone in European history. Additionally, religion was deeply touched by the plague. The church couldn't provide an effective strategy to combat the plague, leading to a decline in its influence. Religious leaders' inability to safeguard their followers from the fatal plague led to a surge in skepticism and a gradual lean towards secularism. Public health and sanitation too received heightened focus in the aftermath of the Black Death. Quarantine measures and pest houses were established. These steps symbolized the commencement of modern public health initiatives. The plague thus was more than a devastating pandemic. It was a driver of transformation, steering Europe into a new epoch. The plague's trauma led to societal and cultural changes that would influence European history for generations. The Black Death did not merely pass, it left behind a radically altered Europe, shaping its socio-economic fabric in a lasting manner. The Black Death may be a dark chapter in history, but it holds valuable lessons for us today. Delving into the archives, we unearth tales of an event that reconfigured Europe's fabric, a catastrophe known as the Black Death. This pandemic's magnitude mirrors the epidemics we are grappling with today. The virulent Yersinia Pestis, the bacterium responsible for the plague, proliferated across medieval Europe, a grim reminder of how rapidly modern pandemics proliferate. The human reaction, characterized by panic, fear, and misinformation, also echoes our present circumstances. This is not a phenomenon exclusive to the 14th century, but is prevalent in our times as well. However, the spread of disease is not the only parallel between the past and the present. The potential for societal and economic disruption also reverberates eerily from the past. The Black Death instigated a dramatic shift in Europe's economic structure, triggering labor shortages and inciting revolts. In our contemporary world, we witness similar turmoil as businesses shutter, people lose their livelihoods, and the global economy stands on a precipice. But the Black Death's legacy is not solely one of devastation. It also catalyzed profound societal shifts. It dismantled antiquated feudal systems, elevated wages for workers, and ignited a period of remarkable cultural and scientific breakthroughs. As we confront the tribulations of our era, the lessons from the Black Death provide invaluable insights. The pandemic was a crucible, testing humanity's fortitude and ability to adapt. From the remnants of that grim epoch, a transformative world emerged. Our takeaway from this historical event is the impressive resilience and adaptability of humanity in the face of adversity. We've shown remarkable tenacity before, and we can undoubtedly do it again. We are not merely survivors but also innovators and creators, capable of restructuring our world post-disaster. The Black Death serves as a poignant reminder of life's inherent fragility, yet also of humanity's formidable resilience. As we navigate the challenges of our time, let the past act as a guiding light, a beacon of hope in our tumultuous world. The Black Death reminds us of the fragility of life, but also of the resilience of humanity. The Black Death, a pandemic like none other Europe had faced, was a result of the unseen bacterium Yersinia Pestis. These tiny organisms were the harbingers of the pneumonic plague, an era that became a turning point in European history. The widespread devastation it caused altered the very fabric of society, showcasing the vulnerability of human life to such microscopic adversaries. Its devastating effects created ripples that touched every aspect of life, from societal structures to economic stability. The societal disintegration catalyzed by the Black Death was an unsettling spectacle that highlighted the fluidity of life. In the wake of this devastation, however, Europe rose from the ashes, undergoing transformations that were previously inconceivable. These changes weren't just limited to societal reconstruction, they had profound economic implications as well. These modifications set the stage for the emergence of the modern era, dramatically altering the course of history. The lessons imbibed from this time of suffering have shaped our comprehension of pandemics. They serve as a stark reminder of the broad impact such diseases can have, forever altering the course of human history. As we grapple with our own set of challenges in today's world, we must recall the resilience that humanity has consistently demonstrated when faced with hard times. The lessons from our history show us that even in the darkest of times we can rise again. Did you enjoy the video? Kindly like it, give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing facts from history. Let me know in the comments section your feedback on the Black Death in Europe.